Welcome back everybody to the Ready or Not lore series. In today's episode, we'll dive into the updated Cherryessa Farms. As always, this video will be divided up into two parts. First, we'll cover all in-game and developer confirmed information, and then I'll share my own theories on where the world and story may go in the future.
Move quickly and clear the area.
An officer lies dead, and the other is under heavy fire on the path to Cherryessa Farm. D Platoon has been deployed to rescue the surviving officer and clear the strange compound. On site, we have two high-value suspects. First, we have Elaine Raskin, the main proprietor of Carried from Crisis LLC, advertised as a place for women who have been given, quote, no other option but to step away from their former lives in an effort to save themselves from misery. This nonprofit organization was closed down in 2016 after 5 years of operation. Looking at the associated media for this mission, we learned that Raskin was once a USIA agent discharged from active duty. And just like Gerard, all the info about her is sealed off and her reasons for being discharged are unknown. Also, either before or after the gunfight ensued, she made this 911 call.
911, this call is being recorded. What is your emergency?
We do not want this. Our hand has been forced by the action of a society that wants to keep us weak and subservient.
I'm sorry, ma'am, but this is an emergency line. I'm going to have to ask you to hang up.
They must learn to pay for their crimes.
Ma'am, I'm going to have to...
You bow down to them. You offer yourself like a cheap whore. You can be saved, but only when you realize the power they hold over you is nothing but smoke and mirrors.
Ma'am, where are you calling from?
Good. Yes, send them all to the slaughter. We are one, and we are tired of being treated like pets and incubators for the next generation of filth.
Can I take your name, ma'am?
My name? My name is of no consequence, because we are one. They stole our bodies, our minds, and our spirits, but they could not break us. We are weak no more.
Ma'am.
We will not stop, and we will not be stopped.
Based on the call, we can tell Raskin is clearly unhinged. It is also likely that she will be highly dangerous and won't go down without a fight. Next, we have Eve Nader. Years prior, she was known to the LSPD due to her husband and child having reached out to file a missing persons report in June of 2011. Since then, she has been suspected to be living on the Cherryessa Farm compound with Raskin. Eve was not known to have any weapons training at the time of her disappearance. Due to the evidence collected from this mission, we know this map takes place on June 1st, 2025, meaning Eve has been missing for 14 years. Also, I'm fairly sure that this Eve is not the Eve Gerard mentions in his recordings, unless it's like a George Span situation, which in all honesty it totally could be. But until further confirmation, just assume they're different people. Now with all that covered, let's listen to Officer Garcia's 911 call and the mission briefing.
911, this call is being recorded. What is your emergency?
This is Officer Mariana Garcia. I've come under heavy fire at the Cherryessa family vineyards.
Ma'am, did you say Officer Garcia?
Yes, Officer Garcia. There's no radio reception out here. We got an officer down and I'm pinned down on all sides. I need immediate assistance.
Officer Garcia, can you please confirm your location?
Yes, I'm at the Cherryessa family vineyards. Sergeant Bettis is dead and I need help. Please send assistance now.
Okay, Officer Garcia, have you radioed for assistance?
I tried, but the reception out here sucks. Nothing but static coming through. I don't think anyone heard me.
Okay, I've put your call through to dispatch. Units are en route. Stay safe, Officer Garcia.
Okay, this is gonna be quick and dirty. We've got an officer down and one more under fire at the Cherryessa family vineyards in Santa Vino. We've all heard the stories about that place, but something escalated. We don't know much about this place, so we'll be going in somewhat blind. Officer Garcia is stranded at the vineyard and taking heavy fire from all sides. Sergeant Perez is dead. LSPD is en route with all available units responding, but we need to get out there and shut it down. The Cherryessa Vineyards have always kept to themselves, but this morning, the LSPD got reports of a group of women from that compound assaulting a male inside a gun store. They fled the scene in a white truck, and the plates traced back to Elaine Raskin. Now, Raskin is an interesting character. She's ex-USIA. She's got a discharge, but everything relating to her is sealed. If she's leading this thing, then we gotta be smart with how we go about everything. The Cherryessa Vineyard is a large complex with 3 primary buildings and also several small outbuildings that pose a threat. However, Officer Garcia is pinned down in the central courtyard. Our primary goal is to get her out of there and then set up a perimeter and try to make contact with Raskin. The layout of the vineyard is being uploaded to your devices right now. Study it as we get moving, because there's no time to waste. There's been plenty of shit shows over the years with incidents like this, and I will not have this being another one. Any questions? Good. Now get your gear and get your ass in a seat. Move!
So prior to this event, Cherryessa Farm already had some form of notoriety for something. The officers just mentioned that they have all heard stories about the place, but never go into any detail. Based on the compound's appearance, I assume it's all rumors of cult activity, like some Branch Davidians or People's Temple kind of thing. Arriving on scene, we see that the farm has been completely reworked and looks nothing like it did in the prior version. The placeholder MLO guys are now all gone, and in their place are women, some rocking creepy masks, and the others doing their best Red Rising Harmony cosplay. Regardless, we are immediately met with a crashed police cruiser with no officers in sight. Moving up into the compound, the courtyard is heavily overgrown with the occasional statue standing guard. There are also some creepy wire outlines of women covered in flowers, giving me heavy Annihilation vibes, which, by the way, if you haven't seen it, fantastic movie if you're into cosmic horror. I highly recommend it. Entering the house, we see it's actually kind of a nice cozy place. Nice big kitchen, a big open floor plan, and a fireplace. But that feeling of coziness quickly dissipates as we explore further. Moving to the back of the house, we find a familiar sight, a conspiracy board. Let's start from the left to the right. On a table, we see a map with a route to a bar mapped out, accompanied by several photos. To the right, we have 2 sketches. The first is of Dennis Noble, and the description reads that he got women drunk at bars, forced himself onto her, beat her when she said no, and raped her in his truck behind the bar. Note, he has a fetish for women in heels. We can use this to lure him here. Next, we have Big Dick Rick. He frequently visits Neon Nightclub downtown. Wandering hands on the dance floor is an understatement. Has a huge ego, big fan of date rape, drugs, sexually assaulted countless women in the club, drugged, raped, and beat Jessie behind the club whilst she worked there. Note, he is all Jessie's for what he did to her. Make sure when we take what he values the most, he does not bleed out too quickly. There's also a picture of a newspaper that reads, "Child abduction on the rise. Watt Community College student assaulted by former professor." Moving over, we find a picture of Aaron Shepard, who is a local pimp accused of murder. 4 years in county, owns many women, which he treats badly, makes scheduled trips to Caesar's Cars, but why? Side note, I don't think this means Aaron Shepard is a Spider affiliate, more so just a pimp on their payroll collecting trafficked girls for his operation at Caesar's. Continuing on, we have Nathan Flores, a groundskeeper at local park, trailer park trash, abducted a little girl, and kept her in his basement. Next to him are more newspaper snippets. One reads, "Sexual assault cases on the rise. Los Sueños senator charged with sexual assault." And police discover trafficking tunnels. No suspects apprehended. Probable link in missing women's case. Then we have Michael Manning, released on bond, a notorious sexual predator sentenced to 5 years. Next we have philanthropist or pedophile. Infamous porn actor Amos Vull expects to be found innocent of sex crimes. Tells friends he'll find a way, facing a possible sentence of 18 years. And finally, multiple young girls found in a runoff pit. Jesus, Los Sueños is bleak. Moving on to the last board, we have Marty Fowler. Works as a school janitor, selling weed to underage kids, has a special closet in the school where he likes to bring little girls, serve time for public indecency, disgusting pedophile, works late, pick him up when he gets off his shift. And finally, we have Tommy McCall, stadium groundskeeper, divorced, alcoholic, rapist, wife beater, multiple sexual assault charges, never prosecuted, ex-wife once in. On the floor, we see many drawings in progress of more men and some women. Looking back the way we came in, we see written above the doorway, "Ye art not the darkness thine hast endured. Ye art thine light that refused to surrender," which is an Old English stylization of the quote from poet John Mark Green, which reads, "You are not the darkness you endured. You are the light that refused to surrender." So if it wasn't extremely obvious by now, this cult of women mostly, if not entirely, consists of abused women. Raskin brings them in with promises of sanctuary from their abusers, then more than likely militarizes them by training them how to kill. Specifically, kill their abusers, further hinting at the idea that Raskin wasn't some desk jockey like Gerard was. Moving on to the next room, we find the art studio, where whoever has been creating the drawings found on the conspiracy board practices their art. Out of all the pieces of art, this skull tree art thing stands out to me the most, as it gives me the same cave painting vibes of that one guy we saw last episode, which is interesting. Before we exit the house, let's check out the other side. We can find a new magazine that reads, "The 1997 Los Sueños Fire, 5 years after drought and a defunded LSFD. How one funding reform set the city back 5 years and what we can learn from this today." So now we know that the LSPD isn't the only governmental body that was defunded. According to this magazine, it was also the fire department following the horrendous 1997 Los Sueños fire that killed hundreds of people. We learned about this fire during the meth house raid, and long story short, because of that fire, the 213 Park area never financially recovered, resulting in it falling on extremely hard times many, many years later. Entering the next room, we immediately run into a journal from one of the unnamed women that reads, "Day 173. Elaine suggested I keep a diary of my thoughts and feelings, as recently I have been struggling to come to terms with my emotions on the matter. She keeps saying that each day we go on is another day that we grow stronger, and that our pain is our strength, but honestly, some days I don't feel that way. I'm just so angry. I feel so violated. Even now, almost a year later, I can still feel his hands on my skin. I can smell his breath, and it makes me feel rotten to the core. You've continued to be supportive, giving me tasks around the farm to occupy my time. But honestly, the biggest source of my enjoyment is watching the other girls get what I only hope I will find one day. Revenge. Jessica came to me the other day. I've never seen her like this before. The look of sheer determination in her eyes was almost scary. Now it's my turn, she kept repeating. First with pure joy, and then in a wave of tears, and then untapped rage screaming down the hall. I hope one day that I have her strength to take action like she has done. I'm so proud of her, and I'm so eager to be a part of my first ceremony. I'm a little nervous, but I'm hoping watching what she does to Rick will somehow give me a little closure. Elaine promised it would be my time soon enough. Sooner than later, I hope. I'm tired of the nightmares and the horrible sick feeling. F*** you, Jeremy. F*** you. So according to this, Jessie, or Jessica, did actually get revenge on Big Dick Rick. Moving on, we find more writing on the walls that reads, "It is mine to avenge, and I will repay again and again and again until the river runs red and the sky is once more bright." This looks like a more extended and zealous rendition of Deuteronomy 32:35, which reads, "It is mine to avenge, I will repay. In due time their foot will slip, their day of disaster is near, and their doom rushes upon them." Entering the next room, we see that this cult motif continues to grow exponentially, as there are bloody statues, effigies in the shape of an altered female symbol, which I assume is their cult symbol, and we find a painting of what I believe to be a depiction of women castrating men. Well, it was fun being monetized while it lasted. Jesus, ready or not, what the f***? Moving over to the bedroom, we see text that reads, "Suffer not those whom take without asking, but suffer in return they shall." I couldn't find anything this is related to, so let's just move on to the nearby recorded message from Raskin.
It's the 5,111th day of our goddess. The eminence of her physical form is near. No. The day of her manifest is near. Sisters, you can feel her presence grow with each nourished drop of blood from the misdoers, from those who have sought to cross us.
Let's do it.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Since we began our journey long ago, I have seen many of you grow into brave disciples, brave carriers, ready to bear your pain into those who...
Elaine.
What's wrong?
Eunice and Rose returned from down the hill. Something happened while they were getting supplies.
We'll come back to this in the theory section, but based on her tone, to me, it sounds like Raskin doesn't exactly believe in what she's saying. Not entirely, that is. I totally believe that she's all for killing evil men, but the whole goddess part is more likely made up for control reasons. Again, we'll get into that later. Before we move outside, let's go upstairs to find another recording.
911, what's your emergency?
We got a fight going on in my store. Hey, get off it! What the fuck?
Okay, sir. Stay with me on the line. Where is your store?
Yeah, on 21st Street and Elmwood Drive. Kenny, it's a gun store.
All right. Is anyone there armed?
I don't know. Hey, get back here!
Sir?
They just ran out the door. Jesus, this guy's a mess. You better come quickly. I'm gonna follow him.
Sir, do not follow them. Stay on the line. Officers are on the way.
They just took off in their pickup. License plate G15661.
Okay, sir. Stay with us.
This is a recording of the 911 call that alerted officers Garcia and Perez to the whole altercation that led to this raid. With nothing more of note in the wine cellar, let's move outside. Just past the gardens, we can find 4 recently buried bodies next to an outhouse. Based on the fact that there are no downed officers found on this map, a fact that one of our officers even mentions,
Where the hell are the officers?
then perhaps this is where they've been buried, next to the other men the women have murdered, which makes sense as to why these graves are located right next to an outhouse. Entering the main courtyard, we get some heavy Midsommar vibes with a massive depiction of their symbol right in the middle. Continuing to the back of the farm, we find her. We find their goddess, carved from the trunk of a tree. This church is where the cult members congregate to pray. They pray to their goddess above, while below in the basement, they take their prey to bleed and torture them in the name of their goddess. It's sick and twisted, but you really can't say that these men didn't deserve it. But on that f***ed up note, let's move on to the evidence. First, we have a detailed Freedom of Information Act form sharing pertinent information to Carried from Crisis regarding Eve Nader, who only had recently left her husband and child at the time of its sharing. Next, we have a box filled with photographs. The LSPD CID has been able to identify a number of individuals depicted here, some who have been missing for years. Finally, we have what appears to be classified USIA communications highlighting Raskin's role in some form of top-secret psychological warfare operation. The file reads, Subject Mariposa Plant. Agent Brody, Raskin, I will remind you of the importance of this operation and our slim time frame. Many of our agents are stretched thin and are unable to keep tabs on target Gamma 1. You remain one of our only eyes on the subject and ears, and time is running out. Agent Raskin. Understood. Been keeping tabs on quite a few agencies. Seems I'll need to dial in on the department fully now. I'm all ears. Brody. Gamma 1 remains utmost priority with our plan to implement him within the department. He has completed his training phase organized by our advisory team. Once inserted, he will be assigned a leadership position amongst others not in the program. His performance will be monitored thoroughly via a number of factors. His survival is not ensured due to the high-risk nature of work. Raskin, give me some details, dates, any links, and whoever else is watching him. Brody, we already have an agent you are familiar with within the station, monitoring Gamma 1 within a secluded area. Although we are needing extra eyes. Enter the station and head through the department. You will slip through with identification we have provided. Once you are with him, you will be given extra information on Gamma 1 and our end goal. Do not communicate or interact with any persons other than our agent. Raskin, so when do we begin? Brody, you will meet in 2 weeks' time. Our agent's location will be provided in separate mapped documentation. The text on the back reads, Brody, the first cohort was a failure. We built monsters and turned them loose in the dark. It's only a matter of time before the Mariposa grow and you're hung out to dry. I'll do it right this time. E. And in big, bright red marker, we see the text, Beaumont. Holy shit, we got some stuff to talk about. Okay, let's start with Raskin's recording. Based on her tone and how she seems to be making these things up on the spot, it leads me to believe that Raskin doesn't exactly believe in what she's talking about. She's convinced all these vulnerable girls that the blood of their abusers would be used to give birth to their goddess's physical form. We find buckets and other bloodletting tools inside the church, so perhaps they're pouring the blood onto the roots of this tree as an offering to their goddess. But who exactly is this goddess? It appears her main MO is revenge. She's a goddess that empowers women to seek revenge and specifically kill men. In history, there are a few goddesses that fit this description. In Hindu mythology, Kali is a warrior goddess associated with death, time and transformation. While she is not solely a goddess of revenge, she is often depicted as a fierce warrior, avenging wrongs and punishing evil. In Egyptian mythology, Sekhmet is the lioness-headed goddess that is associated with war, destruction, and vengeance. Sekhmet is the daughter of the sun god, Ra, and acts as the vengeful manifestation of his power. In Celtic mythology, the Morrigan is associated with war and fate and encourages warriors to do brave deeds by striking fear into their enemies. She is portrayed by washing the bloodstained clothes of those fated to die. And in Greek mythology, Nemesis is the goddess of retribution and revenge. She ensures that justice is meted out, particularly in the case of hubris against the gods. While I can imagine this cult's deity is more of a hybrid of all these goddesses, she could also be a representation of another Greek figure, Dionysus. While being a god, not a goddess, his cult might have been a pretty strong influence for this one. Dionysus is the god of wine, fertility, ecstasy, ritual madness, and the theater. Focusing specifically on ecstasy and ritual madness, the worship of Dionysus involves ecstatic rituals, music, dance, and revelry, which aim to transcend the boundaries of ordinary consciousness and connect with the divine. What's interesting about this is that female followers of Dionysus are called Maenads. The Maenads are often depicted as frenzied women who, in their state of ecstatic worship, could tear men apart. And their name literally translates to raving ones. And that's raving like wild and irrational, not glow sticks and ecstasy. In terms of symbolic representation, the Maenads symbolize the primal, untamed forces of nature in the human psyche. They represent the dual aspects of Dionysian worship, the joy and ecstasy of liberation and the potential for chaos and destruction. One famous tale of the Maenads involves King Pentheus of Thebes disrespecting Dionysus by attempting to suppress his worship. In response, Dionysus drove the Maenads into a frenzied state, and they tore the king apart in their madness. While the Maenads aren't a singular goddess, this idea of the Maenads being influenced into a frenzied rage and asked to carry out murderous deeds is almost exactly what Raskin is doing to these girls. She can't simply tell them to go kill their abusers. She needs to instill a zealous fervor in her followers, so they not only want to kill their abusers, but revel in their bloodletting. Raskin is equivalent to Dionysus here. Also, as I mentioned, Dionysus is the god of wine, and this map takes place in a vineyard, so there's also another literal connection. It's also no small coincidence that in real life, there was an actual cult of Dionysus that celebrated the joys of life and the power of transformation. Raskin's cult is a bastardization of the cult of Dionysus. Her cult celebrates the joys of womanhood and the power of transformation through the blood of men. Alright, man-killing blood cults aside, let's dive into who Raskin is and her USIA affiliations. So, I don't know if my game bugged out or something, but I found a second recorder that just played the same thing as the other one. But after doing some digging, I found what it should say. And apparently, Raskin knows who Gerard is, because, according to this recording, she has this to say.
I think the agency sent a message last week. It was coded on the apostate's back. A coded message not much larger than the width of my palm. I suppose I'm being observed, even now. This was a warning. I know it. I've determined that it's best to close down new intake and begin a sweep on existing members within carried from crisis. I can't have an infiltrator amongst the ranks. I have selected my soldiers very carefully. It doesn't make any sense. The coded message used an OTP, not atypical for an older agent to use. Gerard, maybe? I haven't seen that bastard in, Jesus, must be almost 30 years. Even when I was there, he was a dinosaur, about as old as the building. No way he's still working there. Has he been trying to find other members? The cohorts have been established. There's no more work to do. Either way, we closed that operation after that group struck the dam. Gerard, what the hell are you up to?
So Raskin says that the USIA sent a coded message to her warning for an infiltrator amongst her ranks. Raskin thinks it was Gerard because the style of the message was commonly used by older agents. She also wonders if they have, quote, been trying to find other members, and that the cohorts have been established, so there's no more work to do. And either way, they closed that operation after that group struck the dam. Okay, so there's a lot to break down here. For starters, let's start with the cohort. We first heard about this idea from the 4U gas station. On a flyer outside, we can find this. The USIA is watching you while you work. The first cohort controls your life. Now, when I first mentioned this back when I covered the map for the first time, I talked about how the first cohort is a standard tactical military unit of a Roman legion, consisting of experienced legionaries, and basically the first cohort was a key element of the Roman legion's organization. So the first cohort, according to history, was the best of the best. In relation to the Ready or Not universe, they appear to be some sort of USIA plant in various forms of governmental positions. According to Raskin, the first cohort was a failure, and they built monsters and turned them loose in the dark. Now, this to me feels like a Manchurian Candidate situation. I'm not going to summarize that movie and book, but just talk about the basics here. Essentially, it's a political thriller that explores political corruption and Cold War paranoia. But the big plot twist is that the main character is an American sleeper agent programmed to kill specific targets after being brainwashed by communists. If you want an even more modern reference for my nerds out there, think Winter Soldier. I say this because of the MKUltra ties. The ultimate goal of MKUltra was to develop techniques and drugs for mind control and interrogation, essentially gaining the ability to manipulate and control human behavior. This real CIA program, which began in the early 1950s and ended in the 70s, involved a wide range of experiments on both consenting and non-consenting subjects. We discussed this all the way back on my very second Ready or Not video when we covered Sullivan's Slope for the first time. But on one of Gerard's conspiracy boards, we can find a list of names Gerard believes to be affiliated with Godhead, as well as research reports discussing the health benefits of psychedelic drugs, such as LSD and mushrooms. There's also a snippet about a former USIA lab assistant breaking his silence on some kind of experiment. So the in-universe version of the CIA, the USIA, used LSD and psychedelic drugs to conduct some kind of experiment. I believe these cohorts are all Manchurian candidates. They're all sleeper agents, placed in very specific roles to gather intelligence for whatever reason. But I think the elusive MLO are sleeper agents that have woken up. For whatever reason, their programming glitched and they realized what the USIA did to them and the extent of their corruption. And now, they want revenge. Raskin even says it's only a matter of time before the Mariposa grow. Not only that, but she mentions a group struck the dam. So this defunct dam I talk about damn near every episode was shut down, likely because of an MLO attack. So clearly the first cohort's programming is flawed. But the most important thing we learn is that David Judge Beaumont, our player character, who is a highly trained individual who works for the Los Sueños Police Department in a leadership position, whose survival is not ensured due to the high-risk nature of his work, is one of these sleeper agents. This explains why his last name is written on the back of this USIA paper, and why Gerard knows who he is. Judge is Gamma 1. This also explains the secret room we talked about during my precinct video. At the time, I theorized the USIA had a secret office back there just keeping tabs on people coming through, as the precinct used to be a train station. Maybe it's actually deeper than that, as Brody tells Raskin to meet with an agent she is familiar with at the station monitoring Gamma 1 in a secluded area. That secret room was probably that secluded area. Anyway, going back to Gerard, the initial theory we had about him was that, as an analyst for the USIA, Gerard may have found something he wasn't supposed to. He discovered that there's something going on in Los Sueños, and whatever that was, it somehow broke him. He went crazy and began surveilling all over Los Sueños. We don't know what this was, but now it's likely he discovered the first cohort, the existence of these sleeper agents, or the fact that the USIA or a splinter faction are the puppet masters, controlling everything, that he and everyone else are just puppets. And Gerard mentions puppets and cycles all throughout all of his recordings, so we know that the puppets are clearly those who think they work for the good guys, but are just sleeper agents working for the real puppeteers. So perhaps while digging into this conspiracy, this cell caught on and didn't like what he was doing and tortured him, using that LSD MKUltra mind-altering experiment, and instead of the procedure working on him, it fried his mind, thus leading to this crazy conspiracy theorist we arrest at Sullivan's Slope. So theoretically speaking, in this timeline, the USA could have not only won the Vietnam War, as we've previously theorized countless times, but also succeeded in their version of MKUltra. The USIA succeeded where the CIA failed. Again, in real life, the ultimate goal of MKUltra was to identify methods to control and influence human thought processes, behaviors, and decision-making. Or in layman's terms, create brainwashing techniques that could be used on prisoners of war, spies, or other individuals deemed important to quote-unquote national security. So maybe Gerard discovered all this, and through his research could only uncover the identity of one sleeper agent. And that one sleeper agent was Judge. Going further, perhaps when Judge had that altercation with the FISA guy, it jogged a hidden memory of him arguing with a different Fed, a memory that was suppressed during his programming. So maybe Judge's programming is beginning to break too. And if it does break, he might be the only one capable of bringing down the USIA or whatever faction is hiding in the background. Maybe Judge, as his name suggests, is the only one capable of administering true justice.